Okay, yeah. So brother W, basically, and brother DA, as well as brother D, both brother Ds. Um, Basically, what it comes to is when you're looking at, again, it's all about statistics and about just making sure that the statistics are on your side. Okay. If you have a good risk to reward ratio, like you say, okay, when it goes outside the Bollinger Band, I'll buy or sell, and you put your stop, then you know that this right here, wherever this band is at the bottom, will be your target. Wherever it is at that, so if you were to sell right here, whatever's at the bottom would be your target. So what would your stop be over here in order to get that kind of percentage gain? That simple. Okay. This might be one target, the middle line. Well, not saying that you would use Bollinger Bands, but that's just giving you kind of an idea, as an idea of how to look at, just statistics. Now, of course, I've been able to, for myself, is just looking at, I like to know not just the why, but what would make someone do certain things. If I were to take a trade, I always think, who's the guy on the other side of the trade? And how's that other guy going to knock me out? And then that'll tell me, do I really want this trade? Now, there's some real good research online. One guy that I've been subscribed to for years, and that's brother Eric Muatha out of Kenya. He's got a website, muatha.com, that's like he's like a master with the RSI. Okay, he just knows this stuff with the RSI, and I've been with him for years, okay, trading a lot of, not necessarily using what he does, but just looking at, just kind of the way he thinks. I have a different way of thinking and a different way that I like to do my own thing, but I was like, I like what you do. It's, your methodology works for you extremely well, and I see it, it's nice to see that. It's just really nice to see it. But anyways, a lot of times folks will look at like bullies. The reason I'm telling you bullies is because I can, this is what I do is I look for ways of taking anything, because remember, this is a volatility based indicator. It just tells you when things go away from the mean and go back. And remember, as I explained a long time ago and on the session, I think of this middle line as like a river. And I think of these little bars or whatever, your data, your price, where the decisions where people bought and sold, I think of those as animals. And the animals that are going away, or the green animals that are on the top side of the river are meat eaters, and the bottom side of the river are vegetarians. Okay? That's how simple it is. When I look at it that way, it tells me that if they're going toward the river, that means the vegetarians have eaten everything they need to eat, and they need to go get something to drink. Because if it's going up, they're going to get something to drink. Well, in the meantime, these guys are going to start getting hungry. So, it's basically, if it goes away from here, as the price goes up, the meat eaters are eating vegetarians. In other words, buyers are eating the things that sellers have to sell to them. Okay? And as it goes down, the sellers are literally eating, because of the fact that, the buyers are giving them the time to eat, so they're selling them time to eat, they're not eating them, Now there are some times when the buyers will eat, and that's where you see that green, and these are, retracements. Like right here, you see the market go up, there's a lot of buyers, of course, a lot of animals, and then all of a sudden they take a break. And so it gives the vegetarians a chance to try to get back to the river. Unfortunately, they got ambushed by some lions, and they got stopped out until some more, and so as they're moving up, it's telling you there's more sellers, there's more animals that they have to consume until they get totally full when they're up here on the other side of the Bollinger Band. And that's basically these areas where the Bollinger Band is where the animals are full and they have to go back to the river. Well, the thing is that a lot of folks don't realize is I don't just look at one side of the Bollinger Band, I look at both sides. This has an almost incredible relationship with this right here, and that could tell you exactly in the future where things are about, the highest, I shouldn't say exact, but the highest probability in the future where the market's going to change hands, or that you're going to start seeing it where either the animals are too hungry. What it does is it tells you when animals are either too hungry or that they're ready to leave the river. Okay, it gives you it tells you when they're going to bounce directly off the river or that they've eaten too much. Okay, when they're at the river, they're hungry. When they're over here, they've eaten too much. But just by not looking only at this side, but also what relationship does it have to the other side? Because remember, as this is going up, you notice this is going down, and it's kind of like a bubble theory. As you're blowing up a bubble, it's not just the bubble. Whatever on the top is at the bottom. Or as the ancestors in Africa said, as above, so below. It's no different than here. Like right here. Of course, the vegetarians, but what happened? You had meat eaters that, or I should say the invisible meat eaters. Because, of course, the vegetarians, these meat eaters that are up here, they're not as hungry. You can't see them. Why? They've already gone there the river. Why? Because the vegetarians right here are eating, and they're not as they're getting hungrier and hungrier as they're going down until they consume everything at this point where they're starting. And when they hit the Bollinger Band, that's usually when you can tell the vast majority, or like almost 95% of the animals have eaten. And whichever way it is. Well, by using this and just by looking at those that exist and those that don't, those here that exist and those that don't, or those animals that exist here and those that don't. Remember, these animals are here because these animals are now, they've already eaten. And so these meat eaters are, the presence of meat eaters here are the absence of hungry vegetarians over here. So the vegetarians are full, the meat eaters are eating them, and because they want to eat them when they're full, they don't want skinny animals. So the thing is, by looking at that and doing this, like I said, you can take any indicator and predict in the future where things are about to turn around. Okay? And I'm talking with like 90% probability. And by looking at that, I'm able to do that just by looking at how did the animals eat. What did they do when they went to eat? Well, there's a good chance that if they're going to do that again, they're going to do it very similar as they did it to the last time. Let me do this because of the fact that I got these accounts. That's another trading account. So if you're looking at this, for instance, right here, you could tell that the vegetarians, they were hungry, but then they got full. So there was adequate food to feed all the vegetarians before they started going up here. There was adequate food, and then all of a sudden, they started, and then all of a sudden when it came back here, also notice where the river is. How long does it take for the animals to get to the river? If they're going to the river pretty quick, they've eaten a lot, they need to get something to drink. Well, that means that these animals are going to definitely be, getting ready to eat, and so they have to consume all these animals down here that ate before they got to the river. So they have to consume all these until all of a sudden, they get back to the river, and these animals that were down here are the ones that don't exist here because they're up here getting eaten. These animals right here, they have to start getting hungry again. And what happens? They get through the river, and the vegetarians start getting hungry again. And as you start seeing them, this is where they started, saying, okay, we're full, we're going back. These guys right here are now, you could tell their reaction over here by what they did, by how many are not here. You could tell their reaction as to how hungry they are over here and what will push the price up or down and will make them change. So, it's kind of like looking at a bubble. But hopefully that helps.